People are weird. Since time immemorial, humans have held a vast fear of the unknown, opting for the easier route of hate and destroy, where the alternative of grow and explore appears too much. Let's bring this down to a smaller focus. People like Nelson Mandela and Martin Luther King are in no uncertain terms heroes for the work they did to bridge the gap between people who in their times seemed impossibly different. Yet outside of these remarkable individuals, far too many are content to exist within their own in and out groups. Whether it's conscious or not, the fact remains that certain people in our world remain in societally entrenched positions of otherness, and that the road to openness lies in expanding what exists to you as the known, the unknown, and what you are willing to learn.
To explore the unknown, we will look at Muslim groups in New Zealand. Islamophobia is the dislike of or prejudice against Islam or Muslims, especially as a political force. In New Zealand, we have a variety of different cultural and religious groups, and often there are misunderstandings between them. Far too often, we see these communicative breakdowns are because of a lack of knowledge and an inability to ask. This has tremendous relevance to New Zealanders, as they increasingly come into contact with Muslim groups. With 750 refugees coming to New Zealand annually, they largely consist of Muslim groups fleeing war-torn countries. This piece will aim to discuss these misconceptions and misunderstandings faced by Muslim groups in New Zealand, why it is like this in the first place, and the active steps that can be taken to be an effective interlocutor in uncomfortable situations, and deal with those engaging in higher levels of communication divergence with Muslim communities.
However, Islam, like any religion, is simply a set of values and beliefs which guide people through life. In fact, Islamic code forbids unjustified killing both of Muslims and non-Muslims. The unfortunate fact is that the radicalized version of Islam, perpetuated by ISIS, receives much greater international attention than the everyday values of Muslim culture. Western media hasn't helped, capitalizing on fear-mongering reporting, such as the mistranslation of the word jihad as holy war, when really it essentially means striving to live closer to God. This misconception created a negative connotation of the word jihad, and similarly, the entire religion of Islam. Without these misconceptions, Islam should be afforded an equal reputation to other religions with core values of faith, prayer, love, service, and peace. A clear example of these misconceptions in New Zealand was when an Aucklander who was on a public tour of a mosque asked where the weapons were kept. This is not to say that all New Zealanders are prejudiced, but whether consciously or subconsciously, there is an element of violence associated with Muslim culture, creating greater divergence and less willingness to communicate.
There has been a lot of outcry by New Zealanders and others that Islam is a religion which oppresses women. However, this is an ethnocentric view in which New Zealanders have taken their own cultural norms as fact and based judgment of multiple other cultures on this assumption. For example, the wearing of the burqa, niqab, and hijab is taken to symbolize oppression and lack of freedom for women. However, it is a personal choice for women to wear the hijab or not, and many Muslim women don't wear it. Also, earlier this year, the Iranian agricultural delegation to New Zealand didn't shake hands with female Labour MP Jo Luxton. This action was perceived by her as disrespectful and made her uncomfortable. However, the men of the delegation were actually just following an Islamic law about respect for women. If Jo Luxton had known the context of this action, or had been not as quick to judge, the situation could have gone differently. This links to how an Auckland University staff member tried to force a female Muslim student to shake his hand, thus using his higher status of authority to enforce his own cultural standards. He could also have avoided the difficulty by acting from a position of open-mindedness, as opposed to holding ethnocentrism, believing that it was his way or the highway.
Due to the interconnected societies of our globalized world, the issues raised in one nation tend to have flow-on effects in others. For example, after 9/11, US politics and media reacted by focusing on the war on terrorism, a counter-terrorism initiative which unintentionally demonized all Muslims for the actions of a few extremists. When Muslim children in intermediate schools are called Osama bin Laden's daughter, this clearly affected New Zealanders' perceptions as well. The US media focused in on terrorist actions as if everyone is as much of a threat to the core of American life as 9/11 was. They are therefore quick to label crimes as terrorism when the offender is Muslim. The election of Donald Trump as President of the United States further validated people's incorrect assumptions about Muslims, even putting societal prejudices into law with the travel ban, placing restrictions on people coming to the US from countries like Syria, Iran, Libya, Yemen, and Somalia. While the effects of 9/11 and Trump's election are not as strong in New Zealand, they still affect people's perceptions of Muslims in New Zealand through globalized media.
Furthermore, with the global nature of internet, extreme beliefs have much more potential to clash. Online, everyone has a platform to spout their opinions, whether factual or not. It becomes similar to someone shouting on the street about the second coming of Jesus Christ, except if that person was given a microphone, and that person was everyone. So online interactions are very removed from reality. Anonymity means that there is no empathy for the interlocutor, no concern for their reputation or face, and often no repercussions for extremely harmful behavior. The risk of damage to your own face is low, especially when your mindset is backed up by a lot of angry Americans who tend to dominate Western online spheres. Finally, the mutual face, i.e. that of the relationship between people interacting, is also not a concern, because the relationship is virtual and therefore virtually non-existent. It's as if two groups of people with microphones on the street started roaring their religious beliefs at each other in expletive-ridden rants. But instead of being restrained by social norms or fear of someone calling the police, they can just escalate the drama until they're sick of one audience and move around the street corner.
Media is the only way people who haven't met certain cultural groups learn about these groups. This means that anyone who hasn't met a Muslim person is likely to think that Muslims act exactly the way they are shown in the news and online, so hateful, angry, and ready to blow things up. But this is plainly not true. So what do we do? Feel free to ask questions about Islam and different traditions like Ramadan. Lean into the fact that you don't know everything. Realize that it's not your responsibility to know everything. All you need to do is be willing to learn about people and cultures other than yourself. And if you get something wrong, apologize, clarify, and learn from your mistake. And remember that there is a lot of information available to you online. Your Muslim co-worker's job isn't to give a crash course on the history of Islam every time someone misunderstands why they wear a hijab or why they don't. So don't be afraid to seek out information from other places. Just be critical about what resources you base your knowledge on. The internet is a tool for informing. It doesn't have to be a source of misinformation.
So you might be thinking, well, that's great. I've learned a lot from this video about how to deal with my own incorrect knowledge about Muslims, but the world still isn't all rainbows and sunshines and equality. How do I deal with racist Uncle Bill's rants on family occasions? And what about people making stupid jokes about Muslims and bombs? We've all been around distasteful jokes. We all have a racist Uncle Bill, and we know how to deal with him. Respond factually.
I mean, there are 1.8 billion Muslims in the world, so you can't think that they're all terrorists.
Ask about the origin of the belief.
Why do you think that the hijab is oppressive?
Refer to the real issue at stake.
It sounds like you're projecting your fear and anger at individual acts of violence at a hugely diverse cultural group of people.
Refer to an individual rather than a cultural group.
Osama bin Laden committed horrible crimes, but he is one person who doesn't represent Islamic values.
Indicate the problem might be with the speaker.
Maybe you're enforcing your own beliefs about what women should wear. Isn't that oppressive too?
Problematize the rationale.
It's not okay to make jokes about Muslims being terrorists.
It often depends on the circumstances, which of the techniques you use. And unfortunately, there's no immediate solution to people's deeply entrenched beliefs. But with some discussion, we can start to make the world a bit less judgmental and a bit more open.
Imagine all the